Hi everyone, thanks for joining this next section. Again, my name is Chris Plowman. I'm a Client Solution Manager at Magenic. Okay, now that we've gotten the application up and running in the compute engine, I want to talk a little bit about the limitations of this approach and how we're not quite getting the full scale that we'd like to out of the cloud. So one thing is we didn't improve our ability to scale out. The application has images that are stored locally within the web file system, so on the server itself. We have the database right now on the same instance. We could split that out to a separate SQL server, but still that's not the easiest thing to cluster and start to scale that side. We didn't improve our tech stack, so if we had things that were older, antiquated components, we really haven't improved that. So kind of going along with our ability to scale out, we haven't offloaded any items. We're still managing any sort of updates ourselves. We didn't lower any licensing cost, and we're still doing a lot of software management. I mentioned we didn't improve some of the components we might be using, so we'd have to manage those sort of versions. But also at the operating system and our software versioning, we'd also have to do all our own sort of security audits to make sure our infrastructure is designed well, that we're keeping up with patches so that we can maintain a secure environment. So while we got up in the cloud, and that's great, and we have some potential, we're not really leveraging the full power of the cloud today. And part of that is architecturally, the way our application was designed is it doesn't scale out super well. It's really made to be running on a single server. We have that local file system for image storage, so we can't scale out well. And because we're using IaaS and SQL Server, we have licensing cost and the VM and application maintenance that we talked about. So what we'd really like to do is get away from some of those management activities so that we can focus on our application development and solving our business problems, providing value to the organization, not having all this extra workload that's just around managing environments, patching servers, things like that. As we look at some of the managed services, we find that a lot of these headaches go away. We don't have to patch the servers because we're not managing them. We don't deal with those OS upgrades. The underlying hardware is transparent to us. We don't have to do as much scaling planning because the managed service already has great scaling built in. Disaster recovery also is typically taken care of. So while we want to look at these things and certainly check the boxes to make sure that we're meeting sort of our company requirements and any sort of regulatory things, by and large, it's going to be done for us, and we just need to sort of check that box and make sure we understand what the platform provides us and are able to leverage it properly. And then the SLAs that we might have to determine within our own data centers could be a lot of work to figure out what kind of SLAs we can agree to our business. But when you're looking at a cloud platform, those SLAs are well defined. So you can just make sure, do they fit our needs? And as we saw earlier, these SLAs are very aggressive on GCP, so be very surprised if they didn't meet your business requirements. So the approach we're going to use to get to this state is first, we're going to replace the local file system image storage. We want something that's able to scale and be off that particular server. So cloud storage is a great offering for that. That's our managed service that will let us kind of treat that as a blob store in this case. We're just going to put the images there. So then once we're able to scale out, everything's talking to that same managed service. And under the covers, we don't need to worry about how that's actually implemented. We just know that we can get that, we can scale it out, we can access it from multiple regions around the world, and to us, that's all transparent. There's just some magical URL in the sky that we're going to use to get our images. So that's great from our standpoint. We have the utility that we need without worrying about any of the underlying implementation details. Next, we're going to look at replacing our SQL Server instance with the managed service from GCP called Cloud SQL, which gives us a relational database. You can choose a couple different flavors. In our case, we'll be using MySQL. in order to get that same utility, but without using SQL Server. So from our licensing standpoint, that SQL Server licensing cost would go away. And it's a nice open source, well understood platform, but it's fully managed for us. So we don't have to worry about how we'd scale that, cluster, replicate, all that stuff will be taken care of for us. And finally, we want to move the website itself to a scalable platform as a service offering, which in this case will be using App Engine flexible environment for our .NET Core app. So we'll be able to deploy that out, and then we don't have to worry about it. Again, if utilization is high, it can scale out for us. Then when utilization drops back down, it'll scale back down without us having to do anything. Completely managed service, completely transparent to us. So let's go ahead and see how we do this.